Okay, so I have to admit, when I first saw the topic for today's deep dive, I thought we were going to be doing like a linguistic history lesson.
Right.
The word is Hineni. It's Hebrew. You plug it into Google Translate, and it just spits back. Here I am.
Simple enough, right?
Way too simple. It sounds like what you say when the substitute teacher is doing roll call.
Present.
Here I am. Yeah, it just sounds so undeep. But then I opened the source material, this collection of guides and exercises by Chris R. Velasquez, and I realized I was very, very wrong.
You were expecting a location pin, and you got a confrontation.
A confrontation is the perfect word for it. Because the way Velasquez unpacks this, Hineni isn't about, telling God your GPS coordinates. He calls it a sacred posture. And honestly, it's a posture that makes me incredibly uncomfortable.
That reaction is actually the whole point. I mean, if you aren't uncomfortable, you probably aren't getting the concept.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
The core argument in these sources is that Hineni creates this tension between two things: our desire for a roadmap.
And the demand for availability. The roadmap versus the relationship. That's the friction.
Exactly. I mean, think about how we usually operate. If a friend asks you to help them move, you ask when, where, how many boxes.
Is there pizza involved?
Is there pizza? You need the details before you commit.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a 5-year plan kind of person.
Ah.
I want the full itinerary. If God or, anyone wants me to go somewhere, I want the destination, the stops, the ETA.
The quality of the snacks.
Yes, the quality of the snacks.
You and everyone else, we crave certainty. But the source material argues that most of us, we actually withhold our obedience until we get that certainty. We say, God, show me the outcome, and then I'll say yes.
Show me it's all going to work out, and then I'll invest.
Precisely. But Hineni works in reverse. It prioritizes availability over clarity. It is saying yes before you even hear the full question.
Which feels reckless.
Yeah.
I mean, in any other context, business, dating, real estate, signing a blank check is just stupid. Yeah.
But this material argues that spiritually, it's the only way to actually move. It frames it as a shift from what it calls selective obedience
Which is basically doing what God asks only when it makes sense to you.
to embodied availability. And this brings us to the first really heavy concept in the guide: the trap of certainty.
This part hit me hard. The text says pretty explicitly that the greatest obstacle to receiving direction isn't the uncertainty, it's our insistence on certainty.
We think we're stuck because we don't know the way. The source argues we're stuck because we refuse to move until we know the way.
And that refusal creates a blockage.
It does. And there's this visual metaphor in the guide that I think explains this so well. Did you spend any time with that image of the terraced hills?
Yeah, the sunrise photo, it's this stunning landscape, these steep green terraces carved into a mountain, mist in the valleys, and the sun is just coming up.
It's not just a pretty picture, it's basically a theological diagram. Think about those terraces. They represent these hard, distinct layers of our own resistance. Climbing them is exhausting. But notice the lighting in the picture. The sunrise, the illumination, it only happens after the darkness breaks.
Wait, so you have to climb the terraces in the dark?
That's it, exactly. The source is saying that clarity is a sunrise, not a flashlight. You don't get it beforehand to show you where to step. You step, often in the dark, climbing these layers of, I don't want to, and the illumination only breaks over the landscape after you've positioned yourself.
It sounds exhausting and pretty scary.
It is, and that fear is what the guide calls the Isaac test.
Okay, we definitely need to unpack this because
Right.
Isaac is shorthand for that really intense biblical story where Abraham is asked to sacrifice his son.
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually framed as this ultimate test of faith, but the source makes it personal. It asks a question that actually made me put the paper down for a minute.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
It asks, what Isaac in your life do you prefer God never name?
It's surgical, isn't it?
It's rude. But seriously, it forces you to look at the things you've subconsciously marked as, do not touch.
And notice, an Isaac isn't usually a sin. Isaac was the promised son. He was a good thing, a miracle. In our lives, our Isaac is often our career, our reputation, our financial security.
Even our ministry.
Right, the thing we derive our identity from.
So saying Hineni means looking at that thing, that dream job, that relationship, and saying, I am available to you even if it costs me this.
That's the blank check. The reflection exercise in Appendix 2 goes even deeper. It asks you to complete the sentence. If God asks this of me, I am afraid that.
I actually tried doing that. I wrote, if God asks me to change careers, I'm afraid that I'll be irrelevant or, I'll be broke.
And that's the gold. Because once you articulate the fear, you see the barrier. Usually we don't say no to God directly. We're not that rebellious.
We just stall. We ask for more confirmation. We say we need more wisdom.
But really, we're just protecting our Isaacs.
Okay, so step one of Hineni is being willing to lose your security blanket. But then the source pivots to the flip side. Let's say I am willing, but I just feel totally incompetent.
The I'm not ready defense.
Exactly, the imposter syndrome chapter. The guide brings up Moses. Now, everyone knows Moses as this, larger-than-life figure who split the sea, but the source focuses on his initial reaction.
Which was a hard no. Moses had a stutter, he was a fugitive, he had a million reasons why he was the wrong guy for the job. But he still said, Hineni.
But didn't he argue with God for like a whole chapter?
He did. But the source makes this a fascinating distinction here. It says, this fear explains my hesitation, but it does not excuse my disobedience.
Oof, that is a tough pill to swallow. We live in a culture that basically says, if you're anxious about it, protect your peace. Don't do it.
Right. We see fear as a stop sign. This source sees fear as a fog you walk through. The argument is that availability is completely independent of capability. God didn't need Moses' eloquence. He needed his location. He just needed him there.
Okay, so Moses is the reluctant leader, but then you have Isaiah, and in the text, he seems like the total opposite. He's the guy in the front row waving his hand like, pick me, pick me.
It can look like that on the surface, but let's look closer at why he raised his hand. It wasn't ambition. It was awe.
What's the difference?
Ambition says, I have a gift, so I deserve a platform. Awe says, I have just seen something so massive that I am undone, and the only logical response is to serve it.
Ah.
Isaiah didn't say, here I am, because he'd polished his resume. He said it after he had this vision of God that, frankly, terrified him.
The source has that great line. It says, God calls names, not resumes.
Yes. In our modern context, especially with LinkedIn and personal branding, we think our calling is the sum of our skills.
I'm a good speaker, so I'm called to preach.
Yeah.
I'm good with numbers, so I'm called to finance.
Exactly. Hineni just disconnects the what from the why.
Which leads to that exercise, identity without titles. For me, this was harder than the Isaac test.
It's brutal.
The instruction is to rewrite your calling using only relational language. So no titles, no manager, no director, no mother, not even host. Just words like child, servant, listener.
Who are you when no one needs you? That's really the question it's asking. If you lost your job tomorrow, your kids moved away, would you still have a Hineni to offer?
I think for a lot of us, the answer is I don't know. Because we use our utility to justify our existence.
I'm useful, therefore I am.
Exactly. And that utility trap is what leads us to, I think, the most surprising part of this whole source. I turned the page to Appendix 4, and I was expecting like a prayer guide, and I found a productivity system.
Yeah, it really was a gear shift. It felt like we went from a monastery straight into a startup incubator. It's called the Hineni to-do list.
It sounds so contradictory, doesn't it? But Velazquez is addressing a really common problem.
Yeah.
We compartmentalize, we have spiritual surrender on Sunday.
And get things done on Monday. We leave Hineni at the church door and kick up our day planner.
Right. So this system tries to integrate them. It uses that standard productivity flow, capture, clarify, organize, but with a spiritual twist.
Walk us through this. How is this different from me just writing down buy milk?
Okay, so take the capture phase. Usually you capture tasks so you don't forget them. In this system, you are capturing divine interruptions.
A divine interruption. Give me an example. What does that look like on a notepad?
Let's say you're deep in work, you're grinding on a spreadsheet, and then suddenly a face just pops into your head. Maybe it's an old friend you haven't talked to in years.
Right. And usually I just push that thought away. I think, focus, I have a deadline.
You treat it as a distraction. The Hindu system says, capture it, write it down, but don't just put it on a later list where it goes to die. Right. You classify it as a prompting.
So text, Sarah, isn't a task, it's an act of obedience.
Yes. And then there's the waiting for list. Now, in standard productivity, like with GTD, that list is for delegated tasks, waiting for Bob to send the report.
Which is basically just a frustration list.
Usually, yeah. But here, the waiting for list is where you park your anxiety. It includes things that are dependent on God's timing.
Oh, I like that. So if I'm stressed about, say, a medical test result, or I'm waiting to hear back on a house offer,
you write it down under waiting for. It's a physical act of surrender. You're looking at the paper and saying, I have done my part. The outcome is now in the waiting column. I am not responsible for the result. only for my availability.
It clears the mental RAM.
Totally. And that's crucial because you can't hear a whisper if your head is screaming with all these open loops. There's an exercise called the mental bandwidth audit where you literally just list your top 10 worries to get them out of your brain.
It's like defragging your hard drive so the software can actually run.
That's it. You cannot be available to God if you are mentally unavailable because of all the stress.
So we've covered the theory, the theology, the productivity hacks, but I want to land the plane on how this actually looks day to day.
Yeah, because it's easy to talk about this stuff. It's really hard to live it when your alarm goes off at 6 a.m.
The source offers a few diagnostic tools for that. I think the most practical one is the availability inventory.
This is the 4-column chart, right?
Yeah. Yes. The columns are time, energy, attention, and decision making. And the goal is to audit where you might be physically present, but internally guarded.
Okay, let's role play this.
Yeah.
How would someone fail this inventory?
All right, let's take attention. You might be sitting in church. Physically, your time is given to God. You're there.
Okay.
But your attention, it's checking your mental stock portfolio. It's replaying an argument you had with your spouse.
So I score high on time, but like 0 on attention.
Right. Or take decision making. You might pray every morning, God, use me today. But when a new job offer comes in, do you actually consult God or do you just look at the salary and say yes?
Ouch.
If you make the decision on your own and then ask God to bless it, you haven't actually given him your decision making.
That's that selective obedience thing all over again. God, you can have my Sunday morning, but my career strategy is all mine.
And that's why the threshold exercise is so important. It asks you to just stop faking it.
The prompt is, if I am honest, the threshold I am standing before is.
And the key rule is, do not fix it, don't try to spiritualize it, just name it.
So, the threshold is forgiving my dad.
Or the threshold is admitting I hate my job. Or the threshold is my addiction to approval. Just naming it strips it of its power to paralyze you. You can't cross a threshold you refuse to even look at.
So for the people listening who are thinking, okay, I want to try this, but I'm absolutely terrified, the source suggests a 30-day rule of availability.
This is the boot camp. It's simple, but it's hard. Step 1. Start the day with a prayer of surrender. Literally just say the word Hineni.
Okay.
Step 2. Surrender one decision a week without preconditions.
Without preconditions. That's the killer phrase.
It is. It means you commit to the action before you know the outcome. You say, I will apologize to this person regardless of how they react, or I will give this money regardless of whether I get a tax break.
You train the muscle of trust on small things.
So you can handle the big things. Because if you can't trust God with $100, you definitely won't trust him with your life.
And this all leads back to the ultimate example in the text. We've talked about Abraham and Moses, but Appendix 1 focuses on Jesus, specifically in the Garden of Gethsemane.
The ultimate Hineni moment.
It is, and it's so important because Jesus didn't want the roadmap. He knew the roadmap. And the roadmap was the cross. It was torture.
He explicitly asked for a detour. Let this cup pass from me.
He did. He was honest about wanting a different outcome. But, and this is the Christological center the source talks about, he surrendered anyway. Not my will, but yours be done.
And the source makes a distinction here that I think changes everything. It says Jesus surrendered the outcome, not the trust.
That is the key to this whole concept. We think faith means believing God will give us the outcome we want. If I have enough faith, I'll get the promotion.
If I have enough faith, the cancer will go away. Transactional faith.
Yeah, I put a coin in, I get a blessing out.
Right. But Hineni is relational. It says, I trust you, regardless of the outcome. It's holding your own desires with open hands.
Which brings us right back to the question of safety. We resist this posture because it just feels so unsafe.
It is unsafe to the ego. It is absolutely unsafe to the 5-year plan. But the argument Velazquez is making is that it's the only place of true safety for the soul.
How so?
Because if you demand the map, you don't need the guide. If I have the GPS, I don't need to talk to the driver.
Right.
By withholding the clarity, by keeping us in the dark on those Karst hills, God ensures we have to stay close to him. The uncertainty isn't a punishment. It's the mechanism of intimacy.
The clarity comes in the walking, not in the waiting.
Beautifully put.
So as we wrap this up, I'm realizing this isn't really a takeaway episode. I can't just give you 3 tips and send you on your way. It's a challenge.
It's an invitation to a different way of being human.
And to leave you with that challenge, I just want to read the final question from the source material. It's question 34. We've kind of hinted at it, but I think we need to just let it land.
It really sums up that shift from resume to relationship.
The question is this. If God is calling your name, not to give you clarity, but to claim your availability, what is your honest answer today?
Not the answer you think you should give. Not the Sunday school answer.
The honest one. Are you still negotiating the terms? Are you still protecting your Isaac? Or are you ready to say, here I am, even if you don't know where here leads?
That's the threshold.
Take some time with that one. And maybe check your waiting for list and see who you're really waiting on. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
See you next time.